At just 12 years old, he picked up a shotgun, walked into his grandparents' bedroom, and pulled the trigger. Twice. Then, he lit the house on fire, took the family dog, and vanished into the night. What could possibly drive a child to commit such a cold-blooded act? In today's video, we're diving into one of the most disturbing and controversial cases in American true crime history, the story of Christopher Pittman. A troubled boy, a double murder, and a legal system that had to answer the unthinkable. Can a child truly be a killer? It was the evening of November 28, 2001, in Chester County, South Carolina, a quiet, rural community where violent crime was rare and everyone seemed to know each other. 12-year-old Christopher Pittman had just moved in with his grandparents, Joe and Joy Pittman. His life up to that point had been anything but stable. He'd been bounced between homes, struggling with behavioral issues, emotional outbursts, and depression. Just weeks earlier, he had run away from his father's home in Florida and attempted suicide. After being placed in a psychiatric facility for evaluation, doctors prescribed him zoloft, an antidepressant commonly given to adults. But Chris was just a child, and soon after starting the medication, things began to change. Rapidly, his grandparents took him in, hoping their quiet home and steady presence would help him heal. But inside Chris, something darker was brewing. Christopher's outbursts didn't stop. In fact, they grew worse. He complained about the side effects of his medication, racing thoughts, emotional numbness, a rising sense of anger he couldn't explain. On the night of the murders, an argument broke out. Christopher had gotten into trouble at school, and his grandfather had disciplined him harshly. That confrontation, according to court records and later confessions, may have been the final trigger. Later that night, as Joe and Joy Pittman lay in their bedroom, Christopher crept in with his grandfather's .410 shotgun. He walked to the bedside and, without hesitation, shot both of them as they slept. He then set the house on fire, took his grandfather's money, grabbed his dog, and drove off in the family's car, despite being just 12 years old. The next day, police found the burned remains of the Pittman home. It was immediately suspicious. Nothing about the fire looked accidental, and the grandparents, Joe and Joy, were gone. Hours later, 30 miles away, Christopher was found by police. The car was stuck, and he seemed confused. He told officers he had been kidnapped by a stranger who killed his grandparents and set the fire, then forced him to flee. But the story didn't hold up. Investigators noted inconsistencies in his account, and within hours, Christopher broke. He confessed, and what he said chilled even the most experienced officers. They deserved it. The case quickly made national headlines. How could a child be capable of such brutality? But deeper questions began to emerge. Was Christopher truly a cold-blooded killer, or a broken child failed by every adult in his life? His defense argued that the antidepressant zoloft triggered a manic episode, that he was too young to fully understand his actions. They claimed he wasn't a monster, but a victim of over-medication, emotional neglect, and trauma. But the prosecution painted a different picture. They described the crime as calculated. He had loaded the gun, committed 2 deliberate killings, set fire to the home to cover it up, and fled. The community was divided. Some saw a child crying for help. Others saw a murderer who knew exactly what he was doing. In February 2005, after a highly publicized trial, Christopher Pittman was found guilty of 2 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, a sentence later reduced to 25 after appeals. To this day, the case remains a haunting example of the gray area between childhood and criminal responsibility. Christopher was not the youngest person ever charged with murder, but his case continues to raise questions that legal experts, psychiatrists, and families still debate. What makes a killer? Nature, nurture, or something in between? Christopher Pittman is scheduled for release in 2026. By then, he'll be 37 years old, more than twice the age he was when he pulled the trigger. If you found this case as haunting and complex as we did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of true crime. Let me know in the comments, do you think Christopher Pittman knew what he was doing? Or was he a child lost in a system that failed him?